this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial we're going to look at accessing bean values using JSTL. So I'm going to create here a kind of test bean. In fact, it's going to be a sort of fake bean because I want to show you exactly what features of beans it is that allows JSTL to work with them. So I'm going to create a new class here, and I'm going to call it test bean, and I'll put it in a package called beans, and let's click finish there. So here's my test bean class, and I'm not going to create a class here in standard bean format. I'm just going to give it one single method, because that's the absolute minimum that you need to be able to access that method with JSTL. So let's give it a method public string, let's say public string get info, and that's just arbitrarily chosen. But the important thing about this method is that it begins with get, and that info has a capital I at the start, and I'll return this, let's say hello from a bean. So usually when you create a bean, you'd probably have a private variable called info, and then this would be just a get method, and you probably have a set method as well for info. But this is the absolute minimum that you need to get your JSTL working with this code. Now let's go to JSTL.jsp, JSTL1.jsp, and I'm going to use a cout tag again here, so c:\out, and I'm going to give it a value in a second, and let's just make this a self-contained tag just for some variation here. Now here in the last tutorial I used a hard-coded string as the value, but in fact you can also use something which is very powerful and very useful, called expression language, or that's capital EL for short, in this value. And expression language is contained in a couple of curly parentheses and prefixed by a dollar, like this. So let's type a dollar there and a couple of parentheses. And in here you can type various kinds of expressions, which we'll be looking at in these tutorials quite a lot. And one of the most useful ones is you can access the value of a bean. So let's here have a statement JSP use bean, and I'll give the bean an ID of test, and I'll say that the class is beans.testBean, which is that class I created here, although it's not really a true bean. And I will give it a scope. Let's just make the scope page just for this demonstration. And now in here I can access that using the ID as you'd expect. And to get, if you imagine that this bean had an info attribute, I could get that attribute just by typing info here. And let's just put a paragraph tag around that, actually, so it appears on its own line. And let's say value of info attribute. I'm putting attribute in quotes because it's not really an attribute. And now that works simply because the test bean here has this get info method, and so it's, as I say, it's prefixed by get, and the first letter of info is capitalized, following the standard bean notation for accessor for get methods, accessor methods. So if I've got all that stuff in place, I can now access that value using test.info, and if I run that now, let's click the green run button here. Whoops, I think I missed something else. Let's look at my JSP use bean. Yeah, I've got an extra bracket there for some reason. Okay, let's try again. and I'm also going to clean my project because I suspect it's caching, and let's make sure that's selected, and everything seems fine. I think that's all fine. I'll close my tag there, close my JSP bean tag. Okay, I'm pretty confident about that. Let's run that. And there we go. So we're getting the value of the info attribute. It says hello from a bean, and that is coming from here, accessed in my JSTL using EL expression language with this syntax. So that's it for this tutorial. And actually I just want to mention one little thing that I forgot to say in the first tutorial on JSTL, which is that actually a couple of little things. One is that this here, it looks like a URL, but it's just a URI, some kind of namespace thing as far as I know. So your application is not actually going to go to that URL, and if that URL were to disappear off the face of the earth, it wouldn't make any difference. So you just need to have that in there to get JSTL to work. And the other thing is this prefix equals C. Notice that corresponds to C here. We've got C : out there, and we're going to be looking at some more prefixes in future tutorials. But that's it for this tutorial, and until next time, happy coding.